Welcome, everyone, to the Church Solutions Podcast. My name is Phil Thompson.
And I'm Steve Lacy.
Steve Lacy, how are you today?
I am glad I am here because the reason I say that is we were vacationing with my wife last week in Mexico, and I'm looking on
Mhm.
the big news today, and the hurricane is going to be landing like
Mhm.
tomorrow or something, and I'm just so glad that I'm out of there. I don't need, traveling is enough stress, but if you're like, should we go? Should we not go? When we're there, should we leave early? Should we get out of here? Should we, I don't have to deal with any of that. And I actually probably the last vacation we went on where we were on a plane was we were scheduled to leave March 15th or no, 15th of 2020.
We all know what happened then.
Yeah, and we had to go through it. Like, do we go? Do we not go? If we go, will we not? Anyway, I digress. My wife watched some program that I kind of got pulled into called the Longest Third Date. She watches these kind of things, and it was a guy and a girl that decided on their third date, they just met to go on a trip. And I think they flew into Mexico or something right before COVID hit or blew up, and they were stuck. They didn't get home for like 3 or 4 months.
Whoa.
So it was the longest third date. And it was some show where they were doing the dates. And so there
Yeah.
was a camera. And
Did it work
anyway,
out? Did they stay together or was it the end of that?
I doubt it. They never do. Anyway, I digress. I'm just so glad that I'm here
Yeah.
in the States as a hurricane. I pray for those guys there. I want to check on and see, it was stormy the last day we were there. And I was very impressed since we have storms that blow through, Tucson, and we got patio furniture and stuff like that. And I was very impressed with how the hotel handled everything. I was like, wow, I'm just noticing that everything is bolted down. You know, all these tables out here are bolted to the floor. All these umbrellas are securely anchored. They're not going anywhere. So,
Well,
and
and
they,
and to clarify, this was your 38th anniversary,
yes,
and you were in Cancun.
yes.
And but I was like you. I did see the weather report, and I did think of you the other day. And my wife was actually supposed to go with a friend in a couple of weeks, and but her friend ended up having surgery, and they had to put it off. But
They don't want to put it off for this week or next week. So,
well,
and
that's
it's,
yeah, hurricane season, I guess, right? Is that's it's
yeah, I grew up in South Texas, and I thought it was great when the hurricanes would blow through because the streets would flood and the trees would blow over. I was a little kid, and it was just like, something new and exciting. And then we went through Hurricane Celia. I don't want to completely date myself to show you when that was, but when the roof blew off our house and we were huddled in the center of our house, I was like, this is not fun anymore. So
wow. I
it
never knew that
was,
happened to you. I didn't know that.
yeah, it was
Wow.
very scary that all the rooms were all the air conditioning vents and all the rooms were just the roof had blown off, so the attic flooded and all the water came gushing through all the vents down, and we were like, are we gonna survive this thing? So
Wow.
we're as a
Wow.
family huddled in the middle of the house. It was scary.
Wow. I bet
So
it was. Yeah.
I so any that tainted me. We had a beach vacation many years ago, and a hurricane was supposed to blow through. And we're on the beach. We're on one of these elevated homes. And I'm like, got my family with little kids. I said, we're going inland. I said, everybody's like, what are you doing? You're afraid of the hurricane? It's just gonna, I was like, no, we're out of here. So, and so,
Yeah.
but people stayed, they survived. House next door burned to the ground. Um, so
Yeah, wow.
it
Wow.
was, yeah.
I never had to deal with that. When I was pastoring in Kansas, we did have tornado warnings and tornado watches, and we did have one that was close by, and we had a basement. And so my wife still laughs about it because everybody was going down in the basement, and I was upstairs making a milkshake because I thought, well, if I'm going to go, I may as well have a milkshake before I die. But we didn't get hit with a tornado. But Kansas, that's quite common, with tornadoes popping up. So that's the closest I've ever come to, something like that with high winds. So anyhow, well, we're glad you're back. Thanks for coming back. Thanks
Yes.
for being with us. And today is episode number 437. And this is brought to you by DailyDive365.com. Preach once, inspire daily. Go check it out online, Daily Dive 365. It's a great tool that can take the messages that you work so hard on and can actually take those messages and multiply them into areas like daily devotionals, Alexa, Amazon Alexa, podcast, certainly some sermon shorts, those kind of things. So dailydive365.com.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Check it out. You preach already. Most people do record the preaching. You can get a week's worth of meat for your congregation.
Yeah, with minimal work on your part after that.
Yes,
I mean, it's just
very little. You just say, "Here's my recorded sermon."
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, very good. And then we do also want to remind people that we have a webinar coming up, July 16th, I think. Yeah, July 16th is a webinar. It's 12 noon Eastern time. What's the webinar about? Well, the title of it is called Stop Streaming to the Lazy, Rethinking Your Digital Ministry Strategy. And in fact, we're going to kind of cover a little bit of that today, some thoughts on strategy and those kind of things in today's podcast. But we have a guest for our webinar, July 16th. His name is Graham Spencer. He's from the UK, and he has lots of experience in streaming as well as social media stuff and digital ministry, so to speak. And he'll be our guest. So you can sign up by going to webinar.streamingchurch.tv. It's free. And even if you can't make it, sign up anyhow, because we'll send you the recorded version of that. So webinar.streamingchurch.tv. Stop streaming to the lazy.
That's right.
That's right. So along those lines, this morning, I thought we could talk a little bit about a question I get from time to time. And if you want to follow along at home, you can go to blog.streamingchurch.tv because I blogged on this, and I thought we would talk about it today in the podcast. And a question I get every so often is, because we are a streaming company, right? And I get this question: why don't more people watch our live stream? It's a common question I get from some churches. And, as I dig in a little deeper to these things, I begin to realize why they don't necessarily get more people. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about that today.
Yeah. So struggling attendance online. This is an era when churches are rethinking their streaming strategies. And so I think there's a somewhat common misconception that, if we build it, they will come, right? So if I provide streaming, then everyone's going to go there and everyone's going to be attracted to my live stream. And, it's the internet, and we have there's 8 billion people in the world. I would think at least 1% of them would be attending my live stream, right? So
yeah, you'd think, right?
You would think, what are the chances that so anyway, that I think that's an initial common thing. And this is kind of fading, I think, because, this may be 20 years ago. This is very true. People thought if I build it, they will come. So that thought process may be dwindling a little bit, but there are some out there that.
Well, yeah. And honestly, it's good that many churches are rethinking their ministry strategy, their digital ministry strategy. In fact, that's kind of one of the things we're going to talk about in the webinar. It's a good thing that you should rethink it. You should look at what you're doing. So let's just get out of the way some of the common issues that may keep people from watching your live stream or may keep a lot of people out. The common ones are technical issues, right? You maybe have poor audio, which we beat this drum about a lot. Your video quality might be a turnoff. You could have limited resources. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just sorry to interrupt. No. This thought came to mind. I had it and I lost it. And that would be, there's, Yeah, the popular saying is probably from a decade or something ago. Why don't people come to my church? Or why don't people come to church?
Hmm.
And the answer is, it's because they've been to church. So you've not heard that one before? You've
I've
been
not, but
around.
that makes perfect sense.
Yes. Why don't people come to why don't people come to church? Because they've been to church. And what you're talking about kind of feeds into that is they've been to your online stream and we've had some audio issues or some quality
Yeah,
issues, or I had technical issues with being able to watch the stream. So that's
yeah,
people are only going to, well, today they aren't going to put up with more than once, if
yeah,
they run
that's
into
true.
any kind of issue, or it's, and we're going to get to some of this, but it all relates back to why aren't they coming? It's because they've been, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, technical issues. They didn't like what they saw. It wasn't good. Another common issue, obviously, and we're going to get to some other stuff here, but I want to just get these out of the way. One of them is you're not really promoting it like you should. You're not promoting it in your church. You're not promoting it on different media avenues, on different platforms that you use to communicate. Another one is there's just a misunderstanding of the role of live streaming. I mean, and we've talked about this, obviously, when COVID hit, you pretty much had to, you did it, but I think that's changed now, as you alluded to earlier. And so there's a misunderstanding, I think, in the role of live streaming. And so
you
those things are limiting people.
you had mentioned what Kenny had talked about. You had a quote from him from the past about a lot of people will just put a camera up
Yeah. He
and
calls it copy and paste, is what he calls
okay,
it.
all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I was trying
Yeah.
to remember what
Yeah.
that
Just throw the
was.
camera up there and you're good. Don't worry about it. Just throw it up there and then, stream it and put it online as is. And what he was getting at there. This is Kenny Jong that we're quoting here. We know Kenny pretty well, and he knows us. What he's just getting at is you can't just do that. You maybe you could do that during COVID, but
And,
it's not really what you should be doing.
and let's explain that a little further. Whereas copy paste, where the effort is just in, oh, we got a camera, let's put it up, let's turn it on, let's stream and call it good, right? So there's nothing having to do with thinking about what the different needs of that audience may be, what needs for engagement, interaction, that sort of thing as
Yeah,
well. So
that's exactly right. Um, so what most people are overlooking that are struggling with attendance is what they're really overlooking when it comes to live streaming attendance is for many of them, it's just a passive experience for the viewer. It's just there's no interaction. There's a lack of interaction. Viewers feel just isolated. They can't ask questions. There's just no way to interact with people, and it's just a passive deal. And that's not what people are looking for today that are watching online.
yeah, exactly. So and it really goes to the fact that not much thought was put into what we're doing here because it's typically pastors aren't equipped, right? They don't know, they know how to speak to the congregation and they know how to read the congregation and they know how to kind of steer and turn and then make things um, engaging for the congregation that is in front of them, right? Though, there's different things that they can do. And they've been doing this for centuries, at least.
Yeah,
And
a few years. Yeah, a few years.
yeah, and then now we introduce this thing of live streaming, and none of that is going to work. I mean, number one, I can't see my audience. I can't get a feel for, are people falling asleep? Do I need to pick up the pace? You know how
Yeah, yeah. You can't read the
you
room.
were a pastor of a
Yeah,
church. I assume there's a lot, you do a lot of that, right? Where
yeah.
you
You read the room. Yeah,
Yeah, and you inject a bunch of stuff like, I mean, our pastor does it all the time. He goes, "What do you guys think of this? If you think it's great, say yay, or whatever."
yeah.
And then you're like, "Man, you guys are all asleep. Let's do that again."
Right.
So there's there's some blindness to what's going to make an effective online strategy. The pastors really just aren't equipped to that. So
Yeah.
there's
You
some
have to learn.
elements.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to learn.
Yeah.
And that's, kind of leading into the webinars coming up. There's key areas that you need to address to be able to create an effective online stream. So,
Absolutely. I learned this years ago when I first started in radio. And I would be in front of a microphone and that was it. You didn't have people watching you or anything. So you had to almost kind of imagine, that you had people, and there was people listening, obviously, but you couldn't see their faces, in
yeah,
radio. And then even when I gave some teachings on the radio, that's really affected me. It was the exact same thing. It was like, okay, I'm teaching here, I'm teaching scripture or whatever, and yet I'm not getting any feedback. I'm just speaking into a microphone. So I had to learn years ago when I was really young, that there's ways that you have to imagine stuff, and there's ways you can kind of perk things up. So, well, let me get into a few things here, if you're okay with this.
sure.
A few suggestions on how we can help people, pastors and others, when it comes to the live streaming thing and this whole deal that we're talking about here. So first of all, we really strongly encourage you to have some kind of a chat platform on your live stream. Something that would feature prayer, opportunities for people with prayer requests, private prayer. Polls can be an option. Some Q&A sessions during the live stream. There needs to be, well, if I put this in the blog, maybe I need to go back and edit it, but there really should be some kind of a chat host, online pastor host, web host, whatever, that interacts with people. And I understand. I've heard all the arguments. Well, we don't have anybody that can do that. We're short on volunteers. And look, I get that. As a pastor, somebody that was in ministry for over 4 decades, I get it. Volunteers are hard to come by, but you have to work at it. You have to get some people. As we've said here before, for years on this podcast. I mean, the church you and I were at, we actually had a web host that was 1,500 miles away.
Yeah.
And him and his wife would watch the live stream and they were hosts. So there's all I'm saying this is it's not hopeless. There are people out there that could be your host on chat and greet people, ask how they're doing, answer questions, those kind of things. It's
Yeah.
possible to find some help.
Yeah. And there's, there's a bigger picture for the whole streaming piece. And we're going to go through in this coming webinar, these 5 pieces, which I think are really important. I see if I can remember them. Number 1 was your audience and identifying, because if you don't go through this holistic approach and you kind of just piecemeal things together, you're not going to get the result that you want. So you got to take a more, I think, a holistic approach to get people engaged. You want people to get engaged. So number 1 is, who's the audience? Who are you trying to reach? And that falls into a bunch of different categories.
Right.
It's people have never been, have never heard of your church, or it's your loyal people, or there's all kinds of different variations there. And then you got to put together a strategy. Where do I want to go with this? So there's audience, strategy, there's content. And so once you got the strategy figured out, that's going to change your content. We talked about Kenny's cut and paste deal. And, that's obviously probably not going to fit into any of the strategies that you come together for. So you got your audience, your strategy, your content, and then your team. Who are the right people to put this together? What does my current team look like? Are we equipped to meet the goal of the strategy? So, there's a whole bunch of depth we can get into. And then the last piece was equipment, which is what people normally get first. They'll go and I got a stream. I need this equipment. What do you think equipment have? Put the equipment up, copy, paste, and I've got lacking attendance. And my our webinar is going to be streaming to Lacy. I got have my members staying home now. They don't come. They don't come because they get fed on the stream or whatever. So I think you need to be aware of those areas, and we're going to go through in that webinar so if you sign up for the webinar, you're going to be equipped for all of these areas. And I think it's going to be it's going to be an aha moment, I think, for
Yeah.
those that have been streaming for a while. And like you said, most churches are not equipped
Yeah.
for their whole digital side of it. We've been doing churches for hundreds of years, and we kind of got a formula is we meet for an hour, we have a bulletin, we have worship, we have a message, and we got that figured out. That's kind of what things have evolved into over the
Yeah.
past 100 years or so.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
streaming is completely different. It's
It is.
not,
Yeah.
it's not, and the formula hadn't really been figured out. I don't think or there are a few that are doing really well
Oh
with it.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and as you said, it's going to be a little different for everybody. But as
Right.
Mike Gray likes to say, what we're going to be talking about in the webinar can be a potential game changer for your church. He likes to use that word game changer, but I think that that's true. I think that it can really make a difference. So that's July 16th. So you can just go to webinar.streamingchurch.tv to sign up for that. But yeah, so I mean, this takes effort, at least some effort to think a little bit about it. As you just said, strategy, it takes some effort. And if you really want to have success in your streaming and your digital ministry, and not just live streaming, but your archives and stuff that I mean, people are online. They're not going away. They're
Yeah.
online.
They are
It's
online.
they're
And
not going away. So
and you want to make sure that you're directing your effort in fruitful endeavors.
yes,
So I was just, I listened to a bunch of podcasts, and a lot of them would have to do with building business. And you don't want to, a lot of people will spend a bunch of time on stuff that just doesn't yield any results. And you're
yeah,
worn out and you're tired and you're frustrated. And you don't want to do that with your streaming. So what you want to do is put together a strategy that's going to be effective, and then put the effort into that, and then have a means to measure whether it's working or not, so that you're not just banging your head and just, spending a bunch of time spinning your wheels. So
yeah, absolutely. All right. So we got a few more minutes left here. If you look at the blog, there's things I've mentioned in here. Something that I'm just still surprised people don't do, and that's live breakaways. We're talking about, the reason a lot of people don't. The lack of strategy is obviously a big deal, but it's a passive experience, as I said earlier. So if you can have interaction with people, even a live breakaways, it's not hard to do these days. Digital switchers aren't that expensive, and you can set up a camera in an office and
yeah. And one of the things that does, in my opinion, is you go from this, well, it's the kids thing that's like prior to both our time, where they would say, and I see Susie out there. And do you remember, what was that?
that was I that was not prior to my time. Trust me, I remember that. There was Captain Kangaroo, and then there was somebody else that had
It
them.
wasn't
Was
Captain
it?
Kangaroo. It was
No, but
prior to
it was
Kangaroo, wasn't it?
in that era. Was it? I don't know what.
I thought it was prior to Captain Kangaroo.
It might have been, but I remember it because they would hold up a mirror. At least the show I watched, there was some kind of a mirror that they would hold up,
Yeah.
and then they
Anyway,
would
we're
say, "Oh,
dating ourselves, but
I
there was a
know."
kids program that it transformed the audience from a watching audience and somebody's doing stuff on this glass box over here
Yeah,
to, wow, they're talking to me. You
yeah,
know, I'm doing a breakaway and I'm talking to the audience. They're talking to the guys that are in my seats watching the service.
yeah,
They still can't see
yeah,
me, but
yeah.
I know they're talking to me because it's a special breakaway for just the online people. So people kind of go, oh, I better straighten my hair. You kind of get this notion that I'm a part of this thing, which is,
Yeah.
a key thing
Yeah.
that's, I think, the key ingredient for the breakaway piece is.
Yeah, you're speaking directly, and we did this when I was at your church with minimal effort. It wasn't hard to do, and we're just giving you practical stuff here too. This is
Right. Yeah.
practical stuff. And by the way, that kid show, they never mentioned my name. They never, and to this day, that's why I feel like I never get credit for anything. All right, so I need therapy. So look, breakaways, live breakaways, not hard to do, but you can do it. Another thing, creating content specifically for online viewers. This kind of gets into your strategy thing that you mentioned earlier. If you
Yeah.
can figure out who's watching, then you want to have
And,
content
and
specifically for them.
and why am I streaming? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
am I trying to grow my church? And because this is a major avenue that people just that don't respect or don't recognize is people find you online, and if they find you online, they're gonna first thing they're gonna do is get a taste of what you're like. And easiest way to do that is attend a live stream. It's
Yeah.
much easier attending online first time than going to the church. Actually, you could probably I'm sure people do it. They'll go, I'm gonna attend this one for 20 minutes, and then I'm gonna attend this one for 20 minutes, I'm gonna attend this one for 20 minutes, and then I'm gonna decide where I'm going, next week. So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
if you want to bring in that crowd, then it's not a copy paste. You're gonna put together a product that's going to be geared for somebody that doesn't know the
Yeah.
church and would be impressed and want to come visit,
Yeah.
as opposed to the lazy, which was, those people that are been committed to your church for decades and just didn't want to mosey down to the church that Sunday morning.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're running out of time here, but one thing I do want to mention as far as practical things that, again, many pastors overlook is that, when you're up there speaking and you're getting up there to talk, you usually welcome people, right? Well, welcome the people online too, even though you can't see them, make sure that you welcome them and, specifically say, hey, those of you viewing online today, thank you so much for being with us. And then try to include them, weave them into even your message. You had mentioned earlier about Pastor Jeff would say, hey, you guys awake out there? Well, you can direct that to people online too. You can say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, online, follow me as we read this scripture out of Matthew. So it's including the online group. And it also communicates to the people sitting in the pews, hey, there's a bigger world out there,
Right. Yeah.
there's more going on than just what's in between these four walls.
I've got my neighbor Fred who's never going to come
Yeah.
to this church, but he might
Yeah.
watch online. That reminded me, I'm going to go invite Fred to watch online next weekend.
Yeah. I mean, the
Yeah.
bottom line is streaming, live streaming. Look, it's not a replacement for in-person connection, but it certainly can be a bridge, for those who maybe can't attend online or I'm sorry, can't attend in person, but they can only watch online. And then, as you mentioned earlier, people that are checking you out and considering coming, online streaming can be a bridge to get them into your facility, to get them into your building. So there's lots of things you can do. There's we're out of time here, but it's more than just cut
Well,
and paste, right?
yeah. Sign up for the webinar
Yeah.
and we're going to go deeper with an expert. You know what an expert is, right?
You always say this, but I forget. Somebody that knows more than you do or something. I don't remember what it is. Somebody that's got a reputation you don't. I don't know.
The best experts are always from out of town.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, this
They're
guy's out of
out,
the country. This guy's
I know, so
from
he's
Scotland.
way out of town.
So he must be a really big expert.
He is an expert of experts. He's got a
Yeah.
funny accent.
Yeah.
So,
Right. He thinks
that's
we have a funny accent.
then
Um,
so he's yes,
well,
but all
and we've
kidding
had him
aside,
on, right?
he is an expert. So
We had him on recently on Church. If you go to Church Solutions podcast, he's Graham Spencer. He was on, right? He was on. Yeah, he was on a few weeks ago. So,
yeah,
you get a taste of Graham by going Church Solutions podcast, and I forget the title of it, but Graham Spencer's was our. We've had
yeah.
him on before. We had him on
But
years ago. So,
but we're gonna go deeper dive, dig into all this at the webinar.
yeah.
So sign up for the webinar.
All
That's the
right.
easiest way. And you can get the recording too. So if you just sign up, you don't have to be there. If I'm working that time of day, then I can watch it later. If I
Yeah.
sign up, we'll send you the
Yeah.
link to it.
Webinar.streamingchurch.tv. That's where to go. All right, good. All right, we're done here. Speaking of deeper dive, we have this is sponsored by dailydive365.com. Speaking of checking things out, check out dailydive365.com and give it a spin the wheels a little bit, kick the tires, and you make a free trial. And you can learn how your content that you work so hard on can actually start working for you during the week and other things that people can connect with. So there you have it. All right. I think we're done here. We're out of time. You can always check out the blog.streamingchurch.tv, and you can see more of these notes because we didn't cover much of it, but we covered enough. So, all right. Anything else before we sign off here?
That should do it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Steve Lacy. And folks, thank you for spending some time with us today on the Church Solutions Podcast. I'm Phil Thompson. Please take care of yourself and each other, and we'll catch you again on another episode.